Hello and welcome to this special broadcast on WION. This is Desert Storm, the final frontier, and Australia have conquered the final frontier. We have new and first-time T20 World Champions. Australia beaten New Zealand by 8 wickets in Dubai. John Buchanan, cricket's most successful coach and two-time ODI World Cup winning coach with Australia, has stayed up through the night in Brisbane. John, many congratulations. A hint of a smile. I expected that to be a much broader and wider smile. Clearly worth sacrificing sleep there. Australia back as world champions after a long gap of 6.5 years.
Yes, it was. We said at the outset maybe we should go for a super over because the match seemed to line up that way, but in the end, it certainly didn't. A very, very comprehensive win for the boys in gold.
Yes, it didn't go down to a super over, but it was a super run chase, and we're going to get to that in detail as the show goes on. But Australia, John, a very proud cricketing nation. Obviously, there was the fallout of the ball tampering scandal as well in 2018, and that sort of took some time to settle down. What we've seen today was perhaps a return of the dominant Australia that we have seen when you were coaching.
Well, I hope so, from an Australian perspective. But I think as we said at the outset, when we looked at this final, that for world cricket, for the game's sake, it was good to see possibly a couple of teams into the final that weren't expected to be there. And I think that's important always, that while it's lovely to be in the shoes of a team that really dominates a competition, from the overall game perspective, it's good to see other teams, stepping up to the plate, winning trophies and tournaments such as this.
And John, briefly, how badly will this hurt for the Kiwis? The sheer ease with which Australia knocked off the runs, that perhaps when they sit down and look back, that's going to be painful.
It will be. I mean, there's, in a sense, in a tournament like this, you might as well run last as be runner-up in a final. You've done a heck of a lot to get to where you are now, playing in a final, but to come off second best, yes, it really does hurt. It's a dressing room that'll be very, very downcast. Hard to find the right words for anybody in that dressing room to sort of pick them up, but they'll get through this. I mean, obviously all teams are virtually leaving straight away, so they'll be putting this behind them and moving on to their next challenge pretty quickly. But nonetheless, if you walked into the Australian dressing room, it'd just be so buoyant. Everybody'd be floating on air. If you went into the New Zealand dressing room, there'd just be a huge pall, as if the world had come to an end almost. So completely different scenarios, but obviously that's what sport's about. It's about winners and losers.
I'm not sure they're going to be completely riding on air. There'll be a lot of other stuff flowing in that Australian dressing room. But we'll get to the proper review of this match in just a bit, John. I'll just have to sum up how this game went on as well for the benefit of those who are just tuning in. Australia have been crowned T20 World Champions for the first time ever. The most successful side in world cricket have won a World Cup after a long gap of 6.5 years, following a comprehensive 8-wicket win over New Zealand in Dubai. Aaron Finch won the toss and, to no one's surprise, opted to bowl first. Martin Guptill struggled to get going on a wicket that was holding up, and Josh Hazlewood capped a memorable opening spell by sending back Darryl Mitchell for 11. Captain Kane Williamson joined Guptill, and he too took his time to get a measure of the wicket, and he was dropped by Josh Hazlewood in the 11th over. Williamson made the most of that reprieve as he single-handedly turned the momentum in New Zealand's favour. He raced along to 85 of just 48 balls, which equalled Marlon Samuels' record of most runs in a T20 World Cup final. The impressive Hazlewood sent him back and eventually ended with dream figures of 3 for 16 as the Kiwis posted 172 for 4. Australia lost their captain Finch early to Trent Boult, but Mitchell Marsh walked in and he tonked the ball from the word go. David Warner bided his time and got to 23 before cutting loose. in the 9th over against Ish Sodhi. Warner tried one shot too many. He was bowled by Trent Boult for a 38 ball 53, and at that point 66 were needed of 46 balls. Mitchell Marsh saw the chase through in the company of Glenn Maxwell as Australia won with 7 balls to spare. Quickly going to run through a pretty impressive scorecard and an emphatic win for Australia, but a very high scoring final with close to 350 runs being scored. Kane Williamson stamped his class with that 85, but Josh Hazlewood will be forgiven by his teammates and should buy Warner and Mitchell Marsh a nice and expensive meal. John Buchanan joining me from Brisbane. John, on the preview show, we had looked at an interesting stat that Australia had not lost New Zealand in 17 knockout games. We can make that 18 now.
That's right. That particular record continues, and also I think the other interesting thing again is the toss in Dubai. That record continues as well. The teams chasing are the ones that really dominate the winners podium there, and proved once again that being able to win the toss and choose to bowl and exert the opposition was a winning strategy.
Yes, but you know, we didn't know that the pitch was going to help the batters in the second half. But the way Australia went about the chase, never any panic, and to be fair, the bowling barring Trent Boult was disappointing. It was poor.
Yeah, definitely. But if you step back into New Zealand's innings, I think really if we wanted to look at some key points, I do think those first 10 overs is where the game was lost for New Zealand. Australia bowled well. You know, Hazlewood bowled very well, supported by Zampa and Maxwell and Cummins and Stark and so on in those 10 overs. But to be 1 for 57 after 10, it really meant that a large score was not going to be possible. It obviously they got to 172 on the back of Williamson, but I just think Australia controlled the power play and then up to the 10 over mark very well. And conversely, as you were just saying, because the batsman, I mean, even though Finch only made 15, he came out trying to take on the bowling virtually all the time. And Marsh, 6-4-4 in his first 3 deliveries. And you just had to look at his body language. I was just watching his face and the way that he was presenting himself at the crease and presenting himself with a conversation with the non-striker and looking at the bowler. His intent, his aggression, and then matched it with his skill. That Australian team really took on the New Zealand bowlers. And I think we said right at the beginning of our preview, that was their strengths, one of their strengths. New Zealand's economy rate from their quick bowlers and Sodhi was one of the things that really enabled them to get to the finals. But they were put under pressure by those 3 batters straight away. And unfortunately, they just couldn't respond. Apart from Trent Boult, as you said, who bowled beautifully.
Yes, and you spoke about intent, and we saw that in the other game as well, with Marcus Stoinis coming in, high pressure chase, first ball 6. Mitchell Marsh has been one of those stories of what if, John, exceptional talent, won a under-19 World Cup, but has never been able to sort of nail down a permanent berth. Today, his father, Jeff Marsh, will be a proud man. He joins him as a world champion.
Oh, indeed. The Marsh family will be exceptionally happy. In fact, my son played in that Australian under-19 side with Mitch Marsh, and he was, just a big, solid unit in those days and really hit the ball very hard. And, he suffered a number of injuries, I guess, at certain times. Selections haven't necessarily gone his way because he has shown a certain brashness or a certain immaturity in his batting and his approach to the game. But he's now 30, and we can see from at least tonight's game and possibly the innings through the tournament that maturity is really coming to the fore now, and he is definitely relishing the number 3 spot, at least in T20 cricket.
Yes, and also, I spoke about the ball tampering scandal, but it's also redemption for David Warner. He was dropped from his IPL team and he's responded in the way that champions do. He ends as the second highest scorer of this World Cup behind Babar Azam, close to 300 runs. And again, the way he sort of paced his innings. I remember at one stage, he had 26 of 26 balls. Mitch Marsh had 26 of 13. And then he the powder keg exploded and he was off. And after that, he was dragging all short balls all over the park. And the game was as good as gone from that point on.
Yeah, no, again, he seems to be far more measured in terms of the way that he goes about his innings. I mean, he'll certainly take opportunities to score where he can and certainly likes to find the boundary. But he seems to be able to build into an innings knowing that he can accelerate as an innings goes along, because he's not necessarily hampered by the type of bowler. Some of the batsmen are more favourable towards playing spin, or some are more favourable towards playing pace, but he really does not necessarily have any great liking for one or the other, and so I think he knows whatever the situation, he can really accelerate his innings, and again, he's got to his 50 odd. I guess I would have, and I think he would say the same thing, he's got to 50s on a couple of occasions at least I can recall, and has been out soon after. So I'm sure he's certainly the sort of player that would love to be able to continue on, a bit like Kane Williamson did there tonight. But again, of course, it's T20 cricket. You're taking risk all the time, and of course, risk can be rewarded, but it can also be a penalty for you.
Yes, the big question now, and this is what teams across world cricket will be sitting and analysing in the morning, and fans will be asking, can this John, once again reignite a period of domination of Australian cricket? The next World Cup is in Australia in 11 months. You probably would think that many players from this team would go on and be in contention to be picked there as well. Do you get a feeling that all that happened, all the noise is out of the way, and once they've got this behind their backs, they can only go forward from here?
Yeah, well, certainly that would be the case at the moment. I think when a team is dominant around world cricket, it can win in any format of the game, and importantly, it can win away from home. So to be able to win a World Cup away from home, albeit everybody was playing on a relatively neutral venue, but nonetheless still away from home, it's a wonderful achievement. And certainly, again, it's a first, as we said at the beginning of the show, it's a first for Australia to win a T20 tournament. So that's a huge accolade for this team and this group. And then, of course, they leave tomorrow morning, fly back into Australia, quarantine, and then get themselves ready for an Ashes. So that will be an interesting look at where the team's at, because you're transitioning out of this particular type of format of the game, which is high fuel, high intensity, into an Ashes series, which has got its own ignition points and interest, but it's a different format of the game. Albeit England's not really a very strong test playing nation, and probably haven't played too well in Australia really over a number of years. So win upon win upon win, it just builds a real sense of momentum, possibly heads towards this notion of dominance. But, you've got to stack it together over a longer period of time to say that you're in that dominant position of world cricket.
Yes, Australia may have won the night, but when you look at consistency over the last 4 or 5 years, the New Zealand team is right up there. At the beginning of this, preview show which we were doing, I brought up Williamson's numbers, a strike rate of 95 in this tournament, but then sport has this habit of giving you a slap on your face, goes out and plays one of those great World Cup final innings. In hindsight, many years from now, not too many will remember it, but considering the way the game was, how it was difficult to bat at that point of time, clearly a really marvellous exhibition of batting.
It was, and he didn't necessarily find his timing for some time, gradually worked the ball around. But I think, as we said at the beginning of the match, that Conway was a big loss to New Zealand. because he was a good foil for any of the top order, but then was able to establish partnerships and build runs for New Zealand. So to some degree, you know, I saw Williamson as a young player in New Zealand when I was over there as Director of Cricket. And one of the things that he did then and continue to do tonight is, if the team seems to be exceptionally reliant on him for whatever reason, that seems to be when he really rises to the occasion. And so Conway, that loss, I tend to think Williamson really felt in himself that he had to get himself in and had to try to anchor the innings. And then when he felt that it was at least anchored, which was really after the 10 over mark, then he felt he could begin to release his shackles a little bit. And yeah, his innings just blossomed and exploded from there. It was really one of the finest innings I would have thought in you know, T20 World Cup, certainly in a final.
Yes, highest score by a captain in a final of a T20 World Cup. What could they have done differently with the ball when Australia were chasing? Yes, we saw the intent from Mitchell Marsh, but let's not forget Trent Boult has got Aaron Finch as well. But towards what, the 6th or 7th over, once Marsh started going, they started to drop the ball very short. It became very easy for Australia after that. What could the New Zealand bowlers have done better?
Well, we talked about their discipline before the game, and their discipline really revolved around line length and change of pace. And then as the game got on, we saw them really delivering a whole range of wides as well, which is very atypical for them. But I thought the way Santner bowled maybe half a dozen balls in his spell to Marsh was the key, because he was actually turning the ball when he slowed the pace up and, you know, took the ball away outside off stump. Now, that's a brave move because Marsh just likes to free his arms and can hit over cover. But he played and missed a couple of times, got edges a couple of times. So potentially that was a change in terms of the way Santner went about his game, and probably brought about, he would have had to back it up with a few fielding changes. You know, Southey, Milne just didn't hit their right lengths. And in the end, that's the game. Their decision making might have been good, but their execution really let them down. So I don't think Williamson had too many choices, because he couldn't find a bowler that could really stem the flow apart from Boult. And of course, in a game like this, you're never quite sure how many overs you need to keep, you know, one of your key bowlers back. So his disappointment was Sodhi, of course. You know, Sodhi had been one of the lead bowlers for him in the tournament. But tonight, Sodhi was just not himself, but not himself because Marsh and Warner were just ready to take him on. And unfortunately, he just couldn't stand up under the pressure. So Williamson didn't really have too many options. You know, went to Neesham for an over to see whether or not that might work for him, but the ball disappeared again. So it just seemed he was trying to manipulate his bowlers. He was trying to find partnership bowlers together, but he just couldn't couldn't just get any of that response from his bowling outfit tonight.
Yes, and it's disappointing, and it's also rare to see New Zealand sort of have an off day like that with the ball, considering the way they've always fought. Let's go back to the Test Championship final as well. But let's move on. Australia are champions. We have celebrated Australia, and bad luck to New Zealand. And you know, John, since you're here with us, I think it's better we also sort of reflect on the tournament that went by. These two teams we've spoken of in depth, but just an overall view of this T20 World Cup, sort of, you know, cricket getting back together at one place. Nice to see fans after a long time. The big story, obviously, for us over here is India not making it through to the semis. Big disappointment. Bubble fatigue has been mentioned, but do you think they can turn it around for the next edition in Australia? Because the core is probably going to remain the same.
Yes, look, I think so. I think, again, you know, one of the big changes, obviously, within the T20 makeup of India is Kohli is stepping down from the game itself and stepping down from the leadership. So whether Rohit Sharma's given the opportunity to captain the side, I'm not sure. But I think one of the real changes for India will be Rahul Dravid coming into the whole mix. And I just think he'll bring just a real new dynamic to the side. Obviously well-respected person, not only within Indian cricket, but around the world. Very well planned, very methodical. I'm sure he'll make some changes both within the team and also around the support staff. So I think we will see some really new dynamics that happen within that Indian team, not only the short form game, but their long form game. So, yeah, I'm very confident that India will bounce back pretty quickly after this tournament.
Okay, that's positive encouragement for the Indian team. A new start is happening. Rohit Sharma is captain, Rahul Dravid coming in as head coach. Another team perhaps that will be disappointed at missing out narrowly was South Africa. Lost a very close first game against Australia, and that's it. They had issues obviously within the camp with the protest situation, etc. But also, let's not forget, it's a team that is starting, John, to get together over the transition curve. The last couple of years have been disappointing.
Yes, true. Again, they look like a talented group. Again, a bit of reshaping internally, but also in the back room. And so that takes time for those things to settle down, a new captain. So all those things take time, and particularly as the Australians mentioned, I heard Justin Langer just talking post-game that, they hadn't been together as a group for a fair period of time, mainly due to COVID, mainly due to the fact that they weren't touring and playing elsewhere. And of course, tours make a big difference when you can get a group of people together and you spend time together. So South Africa, bit of that rebuilding phase, bit of people trying to get a better understanding of each other, and probably they've still got to make the odd change themselves. But they've got other difficulties that most other countries don't have to face, and that's something that will always impact somewhere in their game and the way that they play the game.
Okay. Also, let's also look at England and Pakistan, who made the semis. England will always challenge in white ball cricket, considering the depth that they have, and now especially, as you said, they aren't very good when they're playing Test cricket. But how do you see Pakistan 11 months from now? Perhaps the feeling you got was that they need to grasp the occasion better. Talent-wise, they're as good as anyone out there, especially in this format.
Yes, well, and again, we see change in leadership, change in the backroom staff, some changes in the side. But I would hope that they will benefit significantly from realising what they have got and how well they played to get into that semi-final, and not just solely reflect on the fact that they missed out in the semi-final, but reflect very much on how they got to the semi-final. Then, of course, hopefully, and I say I'm not too conversant with world politics or world cricket politics, but if there is a chance to have more and more home games for Pakistan, I do think that will make a big difference to their cricket. I mean, they've been gypsies and nomads for a long period of time now, but hopefully as the world settles a little bit, that they get more home cricket, and therefore I think that will make a big difference to their side.
Okay, the news is that West Indies are going there. England have confirmed a tour. Australia have confirmed a tour as well. Now, when you come to the end of the tournament, you love seeing the pictures of the winning team holding the title, as we can see behind you, the 2003 triumph, the ODI World Cup. But John, you also need to give us a team of the tournament. You've picked a very contentious one, if I could say so. So please take us through your team of the tournament and explain perhaps an intriguing sort of slip up, if we could call it, or a miss at the 12th man's position.
Yes, all right. Well, look, I've picked Rizwan and Azam as our opening pair. One, because both of them have scored heavily through the tournament. In fact, Azam was the highest run scorer, and I think Rizwan was second or third, somewhere in there. But I've picked them because of their combination. They are the outstanding opening batting pair, not only of the tournament, but possibly going around at the moment. So I don't want to separate them. So that means it's very difficult for other openers to find a way into that side. I also picked Rizwan as the wicketkeeper. because I think he's an exceptionally good wicketkeeper. And I've also picked Azam as captain because I just like the way that he went about his side, keeping them on the job, doing what they had to do and getting them to where they got to. So that's kind of the top. And I've gone for Butler at number 3. You know, albeit that he's opened in the tournament, but I think he can bat 1, 2 or 3, scored the only 100 of the tournament. And of course, you know, can always back up Rizwan if Rizwan has an injury or you know, wakes up with sore fingers and needs somebody to support him. At number 4, I did have Asalanka because I really liked the way that he played through the tournament, but I've decided to make a late change and place Kane Williamson in at number 4, simply because, you know, an 85 in a World Cup final and the way that he played really demands a selection, I think. But I'll take the captaincy burden off him and leave it with Azam. 5, I've gone for Shakib, albeit he didn't play out the tournament. But he slots in because when I looked through my lineup, I didn't have too many left-handers. So I do need a left-hander in the top order. He's a very fine batsman, but also was one of the leading wicket takers, albeit that he didn't play all games. At 6, maybe a little unusual, I like David Weezer from Namibia. Again, scored a lot of runs through the tournament, playing in a side that didn't win too many games, yet he was a standout player, absolute standout player, whether with the ball or the batter and in the field. And so I think he demanded a position as one of our all-rounders. And again, I guess I'm picking the side on the basis that this type of side can play on any wicket, whether it's spin or whether it's pace. And then the rest, I think, follow pretty well. Hasser Asinga, I think, must get a look in. He's the leading wicket taker, provides really good spin options, yes, along with Zampa. And then our quicks are Bumrah, Bolt and Nordke and Warner, albeit he was, I think, player of the tournament. He comes in as 12th man for me.
Yes, player of the tournament, but he doesn't make John Buchanan's team. We have just seen John Buchanan's team of the tournament. Tell us what you think of it on WIONnews.com and also on our social media handles. On that note, time to say goodbye and, more importantly, good night to our cricket guru who has stayed up all night. Hope to connect with you in the future as well. John, lovely having you on the show.
Thanks, Diggy, and a fantastic show. Desert Storm, I think, a winner.
Thank you. A winner telling us that our show is a winner. Lovely. Okay. On that note, that's it from us. Australia are the T20 World Cup champions. Congratulations to them. Goodbye. Good night.